Welcome, you're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Protecting Ukraine's infrastructure is a priority for NATO, says Secretary General Mark Rutte, as the second day of the meeting of allied foreign ministers in Brussels begins.
This morning we will have a meeting, as you know, of NATO foreign ministers. We will discuss the escalating campaign of Russia's hostile actions against NATO countries. What we are seeing is that Russia, but also China, are trying to destabilize NATO nations through acts of sabotage, cybercrime, and of course also trying to make energy, weaponize energy in the fight between, of course, our systems. And we have to discuss how we will defend ourselves. And that means that we will look at ways to have better intelligence sharing, but also making sure that we can protect our critical infrastructure.
The Lithuanian Foreign Minister has called for more financial support for Ukraine. On the sidelines of the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting in Brussels, Landsbergis said that the war cannot be won off the battlefield and that joining the North Atlantic Alliance is the best security guarantee for Ukraine.
It's very important to say that the war itself, the conflict itself, will only be settled in battlefield. As strong as Ukraine can be in the battlefield, as strong it will be one day in the negotiating table. There is no other way around. There is an illusion that we cannot somehow supply Ukraine with everything that it needs, and therefore we're, just digging in the dirt, trying to find a couple of €100 million or dollars in order to support Ukraine. But when you look at the conflicts that have been in the recent past, take Afghanistan, take Iraq, we spent trillions, literally trillions in those wars. So when you compare how much did we spend on Ukraine, it's a fraction. So I think it's an illusion to say that we are unable to supply Ukraine with what it needs. And lastly, when we say that it's impossible to provide the security guarantees to Ukraine, again, I think it's an illusion. If we want to have peace in Ukraine, there's no other way around. We will have to supply security guarantees. And from where we stand, there is no better, no cheaper way of supplying security guarantees than actual NATO Article 5 security guarantees.
The German foreign minister reportedly said Berlin could send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine if a ceasefire agreement between Kyiv and Moscow is achieved, according to German press agency DPA. Baerbock made the remarks on the sidelines of the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels. While discussing ways NATO member states could continue supporting Ukraine in its defense efforts, Baerbock said that an international peacekeeping presence aimed at ensuring the ceasefire could be considered. She did not rule out that German peacekeepers could be deployed to the embattled country to ensure peace in line with Berlin's continued efforts to support Ukraine. President Emmanuel Macron has rejected calls for him to resign to put an end to the political crisis in the country. The French head of state, whose government faces a no-confidence vote in parliament on Wednesday, delivered the statement while speaking to journalists on the sidelines of his visit to Saudi Arabia. Macron said that because the French people elected him twice, he must respect the trust placed in him until the last moment to be useful to the country. The statement is his first since the far right withdrew its support for Michel Barnier's cabinet on Monday. According to political experts, it is very likely that the parliament will pass a motion of no confidence on Wednesday and the government will have to resign. In a statement on Tuesday night, Barnier called on French citizens for responsibility and warned of the financial and political effects of unseating him. A criminal investigation has been launched into a former high-ranking EU commissioner on suspicion of money laundering. It comes as the new College of Commissioners meet in Brussels for the first time to hash out the beginnings of their upcoming mandate. So does this scandal spell out trouble for the new crop of leaders? Angela Skujins has the story.
Several media organisations are reporting that a criminal probe has been launched into a former high-ranking EU Commissioner, the EU Justice Commissioner Didier Reynders. Now, Belgian authorities allegedly raided Reynders' home and a range of his other properties on Tuesday. These organisations include Follow the Money and Le Soir, and they are also reporting that he was questioned late into Tuesday evening. Now, these papers are alleging that he allegedly laundered money while he helmed the National Lottery organisation and transferred the returns into his personal account. News organisation Politico has also received confirmation from the Belgian Public Prosecution's Office that the alleged probe is going ahead. Now, the timing of this investigation is crucial. The raid occurred 2 days after Reynders' mandate ended and he stopped enjoying certain political immunities. Now, it also comes as the new College of Commissioners will meet in the European Commission today, where they're expected to hash out the details of the next 5 years of their mandate. We don't know whether they'll discuss the alleged ongoing investigation into Reynders, but we will wait for an official confirmation or comment from him and a comment from the institutions. This is Angela Skujins in Brussels for TVP World.
We now move to Georgia. Citizens gathered in the capital for the 6th night in a row on Tuesday, continuing to protest the government's decision to postpone EU accession talks. TVP World correspondent Don Arleth has more on the situation in Tbilisi.
Day 6 and the protests here in the capital of Georgia continue. Now tonight, significantly more people here on the streets. Maybe not quite as violent in terms of fireworks, but we've been told that people have come from cities from around the country and are out here showing their support for this movement after last night's brutal crackdown. Now, last night the police shut this area down much earlier than in the previous protests. They also used violence against protesters, rubber bullets, and tear gas. We were tear gassed a few times last night, just like everybody else here on the streets. As the night went on, we actually witnessed quite a horrific incident with a young man who appears to have taken a brutal shot to the head and perhaps even a shot to the body. It's been reported in local news today that a 22-year-old man was hit in the head with a tear gas canister, rendering him brain dead, and he is now in the ICU in critical condition. Now, whether this is the same individual that we saw last night, we're unable to confirm as of today, but if we're still waiting to see what the situation is with this young man, as he could become the first victim of these protests. Now, a lot of people have been comparing this to what happened in Ukraine, the Maidan, of course. Still, we haven't seen quite the brutality that we saw in Ukraine, but with the numbers out tonight, this indicates that Georgians are not giving up at this point. They're going to continue these protests. And of course, the Prime Minister claiming earlier today that the attempt at the Maidan movement was thwarted by police here in the capital. We're just going to have to wait and see how this night goes on to see if it is more brutal than the night before. Reporting from Tbilisi, Don Arleth, TVP World.
Protests in South Korea continued into Tuesday night after President Yoon Suk-Yeol declared martial law late last night, which was lifted just 6 hours later. Still, the protesters and opposition lawmakers have been calling for the president's impeachment and have vowed to launch an indefinite strike until it takes place. Members of the public erupted in applause and cheers after the Korean parliament passed a resolution revoking the martial law imposed just hours earlier. However, refusing to believe it was lifted, crowds gathered outside the National Assembly in the thousands. Some managed to break through barricades and climb fences in an attempt to get inside the building. Opposition lawmakers have submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon, a process which could take several days. In his own words, Yoon argued the measure was necessary to protect South Korea from North Korean communist forces. Now, at least 200 votes are needed out of the 300-member National Assembly for the impeachment bill to pass. In a late-night address, Yoon Suk-Yeol said he introduced the measure to save the country from what he called anti-state forces. The move prompted major protests from the public and his own party, as the country has a lengthy history of being governed by dictatorship.
As of 11 o'clock last night, I declared emergency martial law with the intention of saving the country from anti-state forces that want to paralyze the essential functions of the state and collapse liberal democracy and the constitutional order. We withdrew the military that had been tasked with enforcing martial law hours ago because the National Assembly demanded that the martial law be lifted. The cabinet will immediately accept the demands of the National Assembly and lift martial law.
South Korea's opposition lawmakers now argue that President Yoon's continued stay in office poses a high risk of military conflict with neighboring North Korea. The leader of the Democratic Party of Korea, Lee Jae-jung, warns that the president could soon make another attempt at imposing martial law.
They will try to impose martial law again by fixing what went wrong the first time around. When the time comes, we, the citizens, along with the Democratic Party of Korea and our lawmakers, will step forward and fight to ensure victory. The moment they realize that martial law enforced with military power is ineffective, I think they will resort to initiating a localized conflict. The risk of provoking North Korea and eventually leading to military conflict is significantly high. Citizens, we need your vigilance and solidarity.
And so that's all the latest news for now, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World for more news and features.